All right, today I want to make a well, because with this well, I can show you a couple cool new things that you can use to make some really cool objects and to make your life a lot easier. So the first thing I want to do with this well is I want to focus on these bricks, the actual well part. And we can see that it's composed of rectangular bricks. And that's an easy shape to make in Blender. So hopefully you don't have any issue with that. You can make that right now if you wanted to, but maybe just follow my steps here. So I'm going to just delete everything in my scene by default, and then I'm going to add a cube. Now bricks aren't perfectly cubed shapes, they're more rectangular prism shapes. So I'm going to scale this cube along the x-axis. So I'm stretching it along the red axis. And that's a pretty good looking brick. However, I just want these bricks on the bottom to be a bit bigger than the other ones. So I'm also going to scale it along the z-axis, just to give these bottom bricks some height. Maybe I'll make them a little fatter there along the y. Perfect. I'm done with this brick, and we haven't talked about this yet, but it's always a good idea once you're done with the scaling or modifying, once you're happy with the kind of mesh you're working with, is to Control A and apply the scale. This will just help us, and it's a good habit to get into for future stuff. It won't necessarily not make your program not work if you don't do it in this particular case, but just something to get used to. Okay, two problems. The first one is I have many bricks that compose the foundation of this well, not just a singular brick. So I'm going to use a modifier, which is in this blue wrench icon, and I'm going to add a new modifier, the array modifier. It's one we haven't used yet. The array modifier lets me quickly duplicate and set how many number of duplicates I want of this original object. Now, I've got a lot of bricks to work with. However, the bricks aren't perfectly flush. There's a little bit of space in between each of these bricks. So in this property, the X factor, I can increase it from 1 to maybe 1.1. And now these bricks have a uniform space in between them. And if that's too much space for you, or if it's not enough space, you can play with these numbers. I'm going to choose 1.05. So I get a little bit of space in between these bricks, but they still look relatively close. Now, the second issue that I have yet to solve is these bricks aren't laid out in a perfectly flat line. They wrap around, they form a circle. So it would be very tedious for me to individually put these bricks in a circle. So once again, there's a modifier to help me with that. I'm going to Shift A, and I'm not going to add a mesh, I'm going to add a curve. And particularly, I'm going to add a circle curve. Now it might be hard to see this curve depending on the size of your brick. So I'm just going to press S and I'm going to scale this circle so that I can see it a bit better. And I'm going to make it quite big. Let's do that right there. So clicking back on our original brick that has the array modifier, I'm going to add another modifier, and it's going to be the curve modifier. And this will let me put all of those bricks nicely on a curve. So all I have to do is scroll down here to the curve modifier. And which curve object am I trying to path around? Well, all I have to do is click here and click the Bezier circle, because that's the only curve that I have. So if I click this, you can see my bricks start to follow the curved path, which happens to be a perfect circle. Now there's a couple things. We can complete the circle by increasing the count of our bricks on our array modifier. But I want these bricks to be quite big, so instead of increasing the counts, I'm going to click on my circle and I'm going to shrink my circle by scaling it down. And then I get these bricks that form in a nice circular base, just like this well right here. I have used my modifiers to complete what I was hoping to do. So I'm going to click on the bricks and I'm going to apply these modifiers. So first the array one, and I'm going to apply the curve modifier. And now it's like the modifiers didn't even exist. Modifiers just exist to help you create what your end goal is. And I've got these bricks in a nice, perfect, laid out circular base. I'm going to make these bricks just a bit taller on the z-axis, sorry. And there we go. I have a ring of bricks for the foundation of my base. So I want to leave you guys with the next ring. So the next ring will have a smaller brick. It will have more bricks, and you're going to position it up above this base layer. So you're literally just going to repeat the process, just using a smaller brick this time, right? So you're going to add a cube. You're going to scale it along the Z, or the X, sorry, the red axis. And once you're happy with the scale, add those modifiers and see if you can get this ring of bricks in the exact same circle as the one that we just did together. So try that, and I'll talk to you in a sec. So hopefully you've got bricks like I do here. They're smaller. I'm going to make that curve a little bit smaller so the bricks are tucked in a little bit tighter. I've clearly got too many bricks now, so I'm going to just reduce the count, and I'm just going to scale that curve just so we get kind of a nice inside smaller brick geometry. So I hope you've paused the video, you've got your bricks there. And once again, we're going to apply both of these modifiers because we're done using them and we've got these things the way we want them to be. I'm going to scale these up just a little bit, just make them a little taller on the z-axis, and then I'm going to move them up on the z-axis. And there's an easier way to do this, but I don't want to overload you with too much. I'm just going to try to make sure these bricks are stacked nicely on top. Okay, and I'm lazy, so instead of doing that process again, I'm just going to duplicate this inside ring, and I'm going to push the duplicate up on the z-axis. I'm going to make sure that it's just touching the top, just like that. Once again, using the z-axis to lock my movement. And let's do one more. Duplicate, press Z to move it up on the z-axis. And once again, grab it, lock it to the z-axis. Make sure it's sitting nicely on top. And then finally, I'm going to take the big base layer we started with, duplicate, lock it to the z-axis. And maybe I'll scale it down just a smidge, just so it's not as big as the bottom one. And make sure it's just sitting perfectly. Bloop. Just like that. Now I've got a bit of a Mario pipe looking thing going on here. So easy fix. Click these layers and rotate along the z-axis, and so that you can spin those layers so they're not perfectly orientated with each other. Take a layer, press R to rotate, Z to lock it in, and just spin it so it's not perfectly lined up. And that's going to add a little bit more of that, a natural kind of brick geometry to your well, instead of it just being all perfectly lined up. Cool. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm happy with these bricks, and I've got all of these cubes in my outliner. So I'm going to just hold Shift and select them all, and then I'm going to press Control J sorry, Control J with my mouse over in the viewport, and I'm going to change this to bricks. Keeps things clean. I don't need the curve anymore. I'm done with that, so I'm just going to delete it. And so I've just got one single brick shape here. Now there's a lot more going on with this well, except we did the complicated part together. We did this cylindrical base composed of bricks. I'm going to leave some beams to you guys because those are just nice rectangular prisms. Those are easy to do. But let's just do the roof together for the last 30 seconds. Let's keep things simple too. We don't need to be as detailed here. So just like we made the roof for our tents, I'm going to Shift A and I'm going to add a plane. Let's scale this plane so that we can actually see it. And if this is the roof is probably a bit longer, kind of along the Z-axis. So I'm going to scale it along the Z-axis. Maybe that's a bit too big. Something like that. And we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go into edit mode with my plane selected. Control R for a loop cut. And then I just need to move my mouse around here until I get this loop cut that goes along the X-axis. Not the one, the green axis, this one. So I'm going to click left, and then I'm going to click right to put it right in the middle. Still in edit mode, I'm going to press 2 for edge selects. And with this loop cut selected, I'm going to press G to grab it, and I'm going to move it up. So I'm going to lock it to the Z-axis. And then we get that little roof shape. I think I'm done with editing this roof, so I'm going to go back into object mode, and I'm going to scale it down because I think that roof is just a little bit too long. And I'm going to move it up above my well. And maybe it's still a bit too big. I don't know. You're not locked in stone. You can always scale that later. And once again, I'm happy with this roof, so I'm going to press Control A. I'm going to apply the scale. And then just like we did with the tent, I'm going to add a modifier, solidify, and I'm going to give it some thickness, maybe 0.1. Let's see how that looks. Oh, that's not very thick at all. Let's go 1. That's a decent thickness. And then I'm going to apply the solidify modifier, and there you've got your little roof. Now my job here is done, at least in terms of you having to listen to my voice. We made the hard parts together. Now I just want you to add some beam structures. You can just use rectangular prisms. And if this is what I'm leaving you with, here I'm going to stop and I'm going to show you what I'm expecting you to do on your own. So here's what I have. Like I said, nothing fancy, just some nice rectangular, some cubes that have been stretched and are acting like beams. So I'm just going to take all of these beams, Control J, join them, call them beams. And I even put a little rope down the well, which is just a cylinder. So there you have it. There's your well composed of a few different parts. You got your bricks, you got your beams, you got your roof, you got a rope just for a nice little touch. And I think this cylinder is garbage, so I'm just going to delete it there. So try to just make something like that. You can get a little fancier if you want, but I don't need anything too crazy. All you're doing is just adding some cubes, and you're just stretching them along certain axes, right? You're just scaling them. You're just moving them along certain axes. And once again, just getting used to this so you can line things up nice and tight, nice and perfect, right? On the Z, move it over on the X, and go from there. Okay. Cool.